This is the story of a very beautiful and innocent girl, whose name was Katie. Her life suddenly takes a huge and dangerous turn when she is kidnapped by three brothers together. These three brothers, Evan, Georgie and Nick, not only forced dirty work on Katie, but also tortured her so much that it became difficult for her to live. They thought she would die from so much torture. But the question is whether Katie can survive this terrible situation or not. That's what we'll find out in this story. Before we go deeper into the incident, let us tell you that we have already uploaded the first part of this story on our channel. If you haven't seen it, you'll find the link in the comments. The story begins with a girl named Katie, who works as a waitress in a small restaurant. Katie was extremely hardworking and dedicated to fulfilling her dreams. One day, when she is sitting with her closest friend, she tells her to her heart's content that her biggest dream is to become a successful model. She goes back to her routine with a sad heart, but the dream of becoming a model lives somewhere in her heart. In the evening, when Katie was going home after finishing work, her eyes fell on the notice board of the restaurant. There she sees an advertisement that talked about free modeling photo shoots. She notes down the number from the ad and quickly goes home and phones the modeling company. On the phone, the company people told Katie that they first need a picture of her. Katie immediately sent a photo of herself. The company called her for a photo shoot at 10 a.m. the next day. The next day, Katie arrives on time at the place where the photo shoot was taking place. There, she meets three boys. Katie had also brought some extra clothes with her so that she could be seen in different looks during the photo shoot. Evan selected a dress and asked Katie to change it so that the shoot could begin. Katie came back with a change of dress and her photo shoot began. After taking a few photos, Evan suddenly stops and tells Katie to wear more short and tight dresses so that the photo shoot looks better. Katie does not like this suggestion and refuses. But Ivan tries to convince her that if she has to become a model, she has to wear such clothes because that's what goes on in the modeling industry. Katie becomes uncomfortable with this and apologizes and leaves. The next morning when Katie returns from jogging, someone knocks on her door. Opening the door, she sees Georgie standing there, with a pen drive in his hand. Georgie says it has pictures from her photo shoot and she can see them. Katie refuses at first, but when Georgie convinces her that he has deleted all the photos from his computer to protect her privacy, Katie takes the pen drive. However, in reality, George had lied. He didn't delete Katie's photos. Instead, he looks at the pictures over and over again, and is instantly attracted to Katie. At night, while Katie is sleeping in her room, her sleep suddenly opens up and she sees Georgie breaking into her room and taking pictures of her. Katie is very upset about this. She shouts at Georgie to leave the room. When Georgie doesn't listen to her, Katie kills him with an electric gun. Georgie falls down and starts shaking, and Katie tries to run away. But before he can get out, Georgie grabs him and drags him inside the house. He then slams Katie's head hard on the ground, causing him to faint. He first stuffs a cloth in her mouth and then forces himself on her by tying her hands and legs with a wire. Meanwhile, Katie's neighbor reaches there after hearing the noise. Georgie attacks him and brutally kills him. He then closes the door and forces himself on Katie. Katie screams, but he ignores her voice. After the lust is complete, Georgie realizes his mistake. He hurriedly calls his brothers, Evan and Nick. When they arrive, Ewan lashes out at Georgie, but then cleans the house wearing a plastic bag and wipes the fingerprint. Georgie hands Katie the knife with which he killed the neighbor, and then places it near the neighbor's corpse to make it look like Katie committed the murder. After this, they drug Katie and make her unconscious and take her somewhere in the car. Upon regaining consciousness, Katie sees Nick doing dirty work with her while she is chained. Georgie arrives and stops Nick, but Nick brutally urinates on Katie. Georgie and Nick fight, but Ewan intervenes. The three brothers leave Katie there. Then Georgie brings him clothes and shoes to wear. As Georgie begins to put on her shoes, Katie attacks him with a bucket and escapes by jumping out of the window. She asks for help on the street, but no one stops. A police officer and a detective arrive. The detective puts Katie in his car and asks where she is from. Katie explains that she is from New York, but the detective says that she is now in Bulgaria. Katie is shocked to hear this. The detective takes her to his office and interrogates her, but Katie demands to go to the American embassy. Just then, a woman named Anna arrives, who runs the NGO. She says that she can understand Katie's pain because she has also suffered something like this. Katie begs him to take her to the embassy, to which Anna agrees and says to first go to her house, where she will give her clothes and rest. Trusting Anna, Katie goes to her house. After this, Anna starts taking Katie to the basement of the house, which Katie is surprised to see. She realizes that this is the same place from which she had fled earlier. That's when Evan shows up and grabs Katie and chains her to the same spot again. A short time later, Georgie and Evan's ruthless father arrives with an electric rod. He sends Georgie and Evan outside, delivering electric shocks to various parts of Katie's body. Katie starts screaming in pain, but he continues to give shocks until Katie faints. Even this does not satisfy him, so he also does bad things with Katie. At the same time, there is Anna in a nearby room, who is crying on hearing Katie's screams. Why this crocodile is shedding tears, we will know later. After a while, Evan comes to Katie and we see that Katie's condition has become extremely bad. She can die at any moment, but despite this, Ewan begins to brutally beat her. Her condition worsens. After this, these people dig a pit in the ground and come to Katie and tear all her clothes. They begin to put her in a large box, and Katie tearfully pleads with them, but no one listens to her. They bury him alive in the same pit and normalize the place by pouring mud from above. But they didn't know that the place where they buried Katie had an old sewer line underneath. Due to the weight of the box, the soil slides and the box falls down and breaks, saving Katie's life. We then see Evan and Nick, where Nick asks Evan to party the night away. But Evan refuses, leading Nick to decide to go to the party alone. At the same time, we see Katie, who is in a bad condition and was not able to walk properly. Katie then finds a cloth covering her body and tries to get out of there. Only then does she find a door that opens directly into the church. There the father of the church hears some noise and goes to see that Katie is stealing food. Father stops him from stealing and gives him food and drink, some clothes and a Bible. Katie then leaves. The father understands that something bad has happened to this girl. Katie looks at the sewer lines and checks where the exits are. She comes to the church again, where father talks to her and says he can help her by calling the police. But Katie refuses and leaves. Father notices that Katie has read the chapter in the Bible that talks about punishing bad people. This means that Katie has now decided to take revenge for the atrocity committed on her. Katie then breaks into their house, steals some money, and chases after them to find out who lives where and when. The next morning, Katie forces Georgie to come after her by showing herself, and attacks her by taking her to the sewer line. She puts a noose around his neck and knocks him unconscious. Georgie is shown tied up in one place, and Katie wounds his skin with a knife, just as Georgie did to her. After that, apply some grease on the wound. Katie then goes after Nick, who is drinking at a bar. Katie had mixed something in his drink. After drinking, Nick vomits and runs to the bathroom. Katie closes the door there and knocks him down. Then, just as Nick had done to her, Katie grabs him by the neck and drowns him in the dirty toilet. Nick dies in such a terrible way. Katie then goes to Georgie again, takes a rod, tortures him on his wound, and puts a cloth in his mouth and leaves. In the next scene, we see Georgie's father praying in the church. He is horrified to see Katie and tells Anna that he has seen her. He chases after Katie, but Katie catches him and knocks him unconscious. When his eyes open, he finds himself tied to a bed. Katie takes an electric rod and begins to shock him, causing him to cramp badly. Katie then applies the shock machine wire to his mouth and bed and turns the machine on. He gets an electric shock and smoke starts coming out of his body. After this painful procedure, he dies. Later, when Anna arrives at her house, she finds the items scattered. The sound of music comes from the basement. When Anna goes to check, Katie pushes her from behind and drops her into the sewer line, then tie it in a box. When Anna's eyes open, she begins to cry, seeing herself tied up and Georgie injured. Just then, Katie arrives and takes the cover of the box and hits Anna on the head, causing her to faint. At the same time, when Evan reaches home, he sees that all the things are scattered. After this, he goes to the basement and from there he reaches the sewer line. He goes there and sees Georgie in a bad condition. Just then, Katie comes from behind and hits him on the head, knocking him unconscious. Then the scene changes and we see the father of the church and the detective, where the father is telling the detective about Katie. The detective says that he knows Katie because she came to help him before, but he could not help. The father leads the detective to the same door from which Katie first came to the church. The detective moves on looking for Katie. On the other hand, Evan is shown being tied up by Katie. Just then, he hears Anna's voice from inside the box. He tells her to shut up, but Katie says he shouldn't talk to his mother like that. Evan answers that she is not his mother, because after the passing of his real mother, his father kidnapped Anna and forced himself on her several times, after which Georgie was born. Katie goes to Anna and says that the biggest culprit is you. You could have saved me if you wanted to, but you did nothing. Katie then shows Anna Georgie's painful condition, where Georgie dies in agony. Katie then locks Anna's box and goes to Evan. She begins to tighten Evan's walnuts by trapping them in the screws. Evan screams in pain, but Katie keeps tightening until his walnuts burst. Just then, the detective arrives and tries to stop Katie. But suddenly Ivan gets up and begins to strangle Katie. Seeing this, the detective shoots Evan in the head and he dies. In this way, Katie's revenge is complete. Katie then starts to leave, and the detective apologizes to her for not being able to help her in the beginning. At the end, we see Katie walking towards the American embassy. With this, the story ends. Guys, hope you like Katie's story. By the way, what do you think? Did Katie do right by killing these people? Be sure to share your thoughts in the comments. Let's start with another new story. Thanks for that.